Coming up on show 799, one to go, Dyson's car is revealed in a series of pictures. Solid-state batteries were just not quite ready. Also on the show today, Rivian's Amazon delivery truck is on track. The Porsche Taycan, now available to order in Australia. Ford using Volkswagen's platform for its European EVs, and the World Rallycross team that is future-proofing rally classics. Well, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you're listening around the world. Welcome to EV News Daily for Thursday, 4th of June. My name is Martin Lee, and I go through every EV story so you don't have to. Welcome to two new Patreon producers, and it's good to have you, Mark and Scott, on the team, and I couldn't do it without you. Mark Heinel, I think I would say your surname. If I get it wrong, let me know, I'll do it again. And Scott Berger. Thank you very much, Mark and Scott, for signing up over the last couple of days via the platform which allows people to support their favourite creators. It's called Patreon, patreon.com/EV News Daily, and it's how this show gets funded and makes its way on the air every single day for the many hours that it takes to produce. But it's a labour of love for me, by the way, and I would do this show whatever it takes to get it on the air. Let's start with our lead story today. And Dyson, the world-famous producer of domestic goods that was moving into the EV market, they cancelled their EV project. They released a couple of pictures a couple of weeks ago when the Sunday Times Rich List came out, and Sir James Dyson, richest man in the country, I forget how many billions he's got now, but he was talking about the car. It was pictured, and I thought that's the last that we would see of it after spending... I mean, Dyson's a private company, so he spent $500 million of his own money. I mean, that's his name at the bottom of every check that gets written. After spending that, he just couldn't make an EV at a price point. He could make an expensive one, but not a mainstream price point that he was happy with, and so they called it a day. I'm so surprised they just tweeted out a bunch of pictures about the Dyson EV and released a series of new images of their abandoned project, and we now get a complete look inside and out of what was going to be a very clear competitor to the Model X, the Jaguar I-Pace, the Mercedes-Benz EQC, the Audi e-tron, says Auto Express. In April, Dyson revealed the first official picture of the car, a side profile shot. However, now we can see the design in greater detail, particularly the highly aerodynamic shape that Dyson derived for the SUV, they say. Huge wheels. It's sitting on 24-inch aerodynamic wheels, fitted, according to Sir James Dyson, something that was central to the car's design, and not only from an aesthetic standpoint, but also for low rolling resistance and even ride comfort. Smaller details, they say, include flush door handles, cameras for wing mirrors, squared off wheel arches, LED lights, no traditional instrument panel, head-up display, beaming everything that you need to see onto the windscreen. Any button was on the steering wheel to control the car, and further displays either side of the dashboard for the camera-based side mirror system. The car's climate control system uses air filtration technology, you won't be surprised to hear, derived from Dyson's home products. This, the more I see of it, this is a really compelling EV. And although he couldn't find a way of selling it for less than 150 grand, why not put it on the market for 150 grand? I guess he is an infinitely better business person than I ever will be, because he's built a business from nothing to, like I say, worth billions, and it's a private company. And so his name's above the door and on every check. So he knows what he's doing. But man, looking at this EV, this would have been something else. If they could have got it to market, could it have found a buyer, an audience? It's got 3-row seating. It's a 7-seater. Active air suspension that's all very speed dependent, so at low speeds on rough ground it raises up to have higher ground clearance than a Range Rover, but at speed, and it does go quickly, it would slink right down for aerodynamics. And what is becoming clearer the more I read about this, by the way, the more I read about Dyson's car, the whole thing was dependent, the whole vision of Sir James Dyson was dependent on solid-state batteries. And I mean, he didn't bet the house on it because he's spent a chunk of his personal wealth, but not not everything, but to want of a better phrase, bet the house on solid-state batteries. The car was even designed in terms of the skateboard design, like, where the modules sit. It was even designed so that in the life cycle of the car over the 10 or 12 years they would build it in the factory, that at some point they would pull out the lithium-ion cells and put in solid-state battery cells. And at that point, solid-state batteries would vastly reduce the weight of the car and get better performance and be more economic. And the more I read about this, the more I realise that they were just, whoever they were talking to, obviously they bought they bought a solid-state battery company, didn't they? What they called SACD3. That was years ago. I need to research that before I definitive on the podcast. But they obviously made some investments in solid state. Whoever they had working there, whoever their scientists and technologists were, they just weren't there. They were just, well, it couldn't be commercialized. I'll be careful what I say, but maybe the technology was in the lab. But either way, he was led to believe something that when he realised it couldn't be done. I mean, solid-state batteries are a long, long away, far off from being commercialised at a sensible price. And so it appears that to me, my opinion is, when they realised they couldn't do this car without the solid-state batteries they wanted to, even starting off with lithium-ion batteries, it was going to be the first of 2 or 3 cars as well built on this platform. I think the whole thing started to unravel, and before it cost him another $500 million. He knocked it on the head. Real shame. Dyson makes a point of saying they paid back every penny of government. They were given a government grant years ago to develop this, but every penny paid back the day they decided to tell the staff last year they were stopping this. 500 employees were working on the Dyson EV. Construction was already underway of the factory to actually build the car. And he's very clear. In his mind, this is not a failure, because all of these learnings on solid-state batteries and even automotive will be used in some way. Obviously, from the face of it, it looks like a failure, but they're very insistent that a lot was learned during this process. But he still sounds personally absolutely gutted that he couldn't get the car price point down to something that he wanted. Really fascinating, and just a lesson in how hard it is to enter the EV market. Wow, a huge amount of respect for what they've done there. And as I've said before on the podcast, he and I are pretty much about as far apart, politically, in terms of our outlook on, he's very pro Brexit, even though he wasn't even going to build the car in this country. Certain irony of that. But that doesn't mean that I can't utterly admire everything that he did and they did with the team as well. Hopefully those people get deployed within the company. All right, moving on. A big story today, and I thought I'd lead with it. Right, moving on. And Rivian, a company that just has a lot of love for them. For a company that hasn't actually been around a long time, but not actually made any Rivians yet, there's a lot of love for that company. The company, of course, backed by Amazon and Cox and Ford, and they're now resuming work at their Normal, Illinois factory following a temporary shutdown because of COVID-19, and a gradual restart now. The Amazon delivery truck, they insist, is still on track. According to a statement released today, in September, Amazon announced they had ordered 100,000 electric delivery vehicles. Nice headline that, by the way, 100,000. I've broken it down before, but I'll do it again now. From Rivian as part of their commitment to the climate pledge. To become net zero by 2040. Well, vans were going to begin delivering in 2021, and they still will be, they said. 10,000 electric vans on the road by 2022, and all of the vehicles by 2030. Well, that's roughly a 10-year period. So that's roughly, and it's 10,000 vehicles a year if it was in a linear curve, as in they were delivering the same amount of vehicles in year one as in 2030. But actually, that's not a lot. Even if that is 12,000, if it's 1,000 vehicles a month. I mean, don't get me wrong, that's a hell of a production, but it's still not the huge headline that the world kind of went crazy about when Amazon's ordered 100,000 of these electric trucks. Yeah, over 10 years or so. Rivian has pushed the start of production on the R1T and the R1S back to next year. The company had initially planned to start production this year, but it's gone back. According to TechCrunch, I'll pop a link to TechCrunch in the show notes for you to read more. Good news, the Porsche Taycan is now available to order in Australia, according to the @Porsche Oz or AUS Twitter accounts yesterday on the 3rd of June. The Porsche Taycan now available to order for Australian buyers. All three models, so that's the Taycan Turbo S, the Turbo and the 4S, will arrive in December, and that's coming this year. And the three cars are available to order via Porsche centres around Australia, with the Porsche configurator now live online with local specifications and pricing unique to Australia. The Turbo S, remember, 0 to 62 miles now, that's 0 to 100 Ks in 2.8 seconds. That is the same as a 911 GT2 RS, top speed 260 kilometres an hour top speed on that, and has a combined range, according to the at least Australian figures, of 405 kilometres. EPA range 201. Real life is obviously way more. All the YouTube videos are just smashing it and getting so much more mileage out of the Taycan when driven normally as well, not even hypermiling. Now, here's the thing that one of my mini frustrations with the Taycan. For charging, it's an 800 volt battery pack. 800 volt chargers will charge it at its full speed, well, 270 kilowatts. However, if you want to make the most of charging on 400 volt chargers, because of the way that I believe the Taycan is 2 400 volt packs stacked, you have to, in some countries, certainly here, you have to go deep into the options menu, hope you're working with a good dealer, and you would hope that, you know, it's that kind of client, that kind of brand, that they're all pretty well educated, and actually specify an extra onboard DC charger to get the most out of 400 volt chargers. In Australia, standard. Amazing. It's the way it should be. The CCS plug on the new Renault Zoe should be standard. Just add the £1,000 to the price of the car. Nobody will mind. Heat pumps on every car should be standard, especially if you're selling an EV in a reasonably cold climate. Do not put these as optional extras. Do not bury them in options lists, because some people will know to specify them, some people won't. And if you want leather seats in a funny colour, absolutely put it on the options list. But these things that I think are core to the EV experience, that make a real difference, right? Because if you end up with a Porsche Taycan, and for whatever reason, in some countries don't spec that extra onboard DC charger, you're going to tell them about a 400 volt charger and be like, why is it going so slowly? Like, this car can charge at 270. I'm getting 50. Yeah. So in Australia, standard. Amazing. Brilliant. Good on you, Porsche Australia. They've also partnered with ChargeFox, the largest EV charging network operator there. Taycan owners get a complimentary 3-year subscription to ChargeFox on their HPCs to charge their 350 kilowatt chargers. Like I say, Taycan currently does 270. I believe somebody listening right now, either on the Porsche forums or an expert, I think there's a software update coming that will increase that speed at some point. Maybe I'm making that up. It does happen sometimes. The old brain fades a bit. Right, let's move on. Well, just another Australian story. Let's stay with Aussie. In Australia, New South Wales government has tripled their procurement targets for new EVs as part of their fleet buying. According to local media, says Electrive, New South Wales government will be purchasing around 900 new EVs this year, 300 of which will be full electrics. New South Wales Treasury saying they achieved their previous 10% fleet target earlier than planned. This means that of the 3,000 vehicles purchased, almost 700 of them were hybrid or fully electric. Okay, moving on to Ford. I mentioned this at the start of the show. Increasing speculation that the Ford-Volkswagen alliance, which has been brewing for a while now, could get even closer than anybody even presumed in Europe. And everything is on track, according to Ford Authority. The alliance between Ford and VW is expected to be finalised by the end of June. I mentioned on this podcast that the VW board approved it recently, and so the new Ford electric vehicle that's going to be released in Europe after the Mach-E is going to be based on the MEB platform. That's Volkswagen's platform they've developed over the years to all their ID cars are going to be based on. It could well be the next Ford in Europe, a badge-engineered ID4, and that means basically the same car with some design tweaks. with a different badge on the front. Just the blue oval. Says topspeed.com, the new EV will be built specifically only for the European market, where emissions rules are way harsher and more stringent than the US. The idea will be to develop a small hatch or a crossover. Now, the latter crossover style does make sense because it's customer preference right now in Europe and market trend, but you would argue, well, that's the Mach-E. And you'd be right. So Ford could be more interested in something smaller, a hatch, and that could be based on the MEB platform as well. Again, maybe a rebadged VW. Interesting times, no denial on that. It's just speculation, but we'll watch the story. Now, front-running World Rallycross team GC Competition is known for running modern Renault machinery, whether it's the ProDrive-built Megane or the Clio RS, but the young outfit is mashing up old and new by entering the world of remodding, or resto-modding, electric classic cars, says Dirtfish. Based on iconic models like the Lancia Delta Integrale. A limited selection of cars are going to be handpicked by the French squad. They'll be converted to electric drivetrain using a kit developed in-house, and the whole car, including the conversion and necessary hardware, will be sold as one complete package for future-proofing, rallying electric style. Moving on to Maserati, and a new hybrid teaser has hit the internet, and it shows Maserati apart from an actual Maserati. We've known for a while that the Ghibli is going to be a hybrid car coming from the Italian brand. A brief teaser's hit the internet. The clip shows a lightning bolt in the sky striking the headquarters, the company's trident at the headquarters building, and it glows up afterwards, sending a shockwave through the whole building, says Motor One. Maserati originally intended to debut the car in April at the Beijing Motor Show, the COVID-19 outbreak putting paid to that. The only technical details that came out about the sedan was it's a plug-in hybrid, not a full electric and not a soft hybrid as well. And so far we haven't actually got a teaser of the car, just a teaser of a electric bolt hitting Maserati headquarters. And final story today. The beginning of June sees the start of production of the Abt e-Transporter. This is a take on the VW Transporter. Good people mover this is. As with the predecessor, the Abt e-Line, which is the official premium partner of Volkswagen commercial vehicles. It's responsible converting the EV. The Abt e-Transporter delivers 83 kilowatts and will have with two top speeds on that, 90 or 120 kilometers an hour. The range between 105 and 138 kilometers. Yeah, on WLTP. Battery capacity 37.3. Isn't that the same capacity as the current e-Golf that's selling very well but is meant to be cancelled, but they keep extending it because the ID3 is not ready? The e-Golf does have that size pack, doesn't it? Maybe I'm doing 2 and 2 equals 5 here, but that sounds like an e-Golf battery pack used in a large VW Transporter to transport 6 people with an aero package on a big vehicle that does not many miles. When you get to that low range, it does frustrate me a little bit, because we're talking recently, only last week on the podcast, about the new Mercedes-Benz people carrier, minivan, whatever you want to call it, where you're listening around the world, with a 100 kilowatt hour pack. That is the EQV, the van. That's 90 kilowatt hours usable, and an amazing range on that. It's going to be such a good working vehicle for shuttles, for chauffeuring, for airport runs, for hotels that have like the valet service and all that kind of stuff. It's going to be amazing. And yet we're talking about a van here that's a conversion by Abt, which is very legendary, but oh man, that's a small battery and a tiny range. Not sure I'd go for that. Okay, moving on. Question of the week this week. Here we go. So critics say that EVs are only for the rich. But what do you view as affordable in that case? What is an affordable electric car? In your mind, it's subjective. I'm going to get every single answer will be different, but I want that this week. I want to know from you, in your mind, when you hear the word affordable, what does that mean? Email me, hello@evnewsdaily.com, or leave a comment on the YouTube show. Well, thank you to every patron of this podcast who makes it happen. 227 of those, and you can add your name if you want to the list by checking out the website. My premium partners are Phil Roberts of Electric Future, Brad Crosby, Avid Technology, Brightsmith Group for Clean Tech Talent, Porsche of the Village Cincinnati, Audi of Cincinnati East, and now new Volvo cars of Cincinnati East. Thank you very much for listening today. Have a wonderful day. I'll catch you tomorrow, and remember, there's no such thing as a self-charging hybrid.